Hi, I'm Peter Repetto, Vice President and Investment Strategist at iCapital, pinch hitting for Anastasia today. I'm excited to welcome our first guest, Mark Wade, partner at CAZ Investments. For more than 20 years, the firm has focused on alternative assets, but now manages over $9 billion in AUM. Mark is joining us virtually from Texas to discuss one of their key strategies, sports investing. Welcome, Mark, and thank you for joining me virtually in the studio.
It's great to be here, Peter. Thanks for having me.
So let's get started. Can you walk me through the origin of CAZ and how they pivoted into the world of sports investing?
Yeah, I'll make what's a very long story somewhat short here. The firm started about 25 years ago with the backing of several families, primarily here in the state of Texas, really as what we would call a multifamily office today. And as time went along, a greater focus grew on thematic private market investing. And eventually, the firm decided to go all in on alternative investments and build a private market thematic investment firm that now still focuses on investing the dollars of the shareholders, the team members, et cetera, and then inviting a very large network of investors to come alongside of us in whatever we're doing with our capital. So alignment of interest is very important to us. And so we've done a lot of different types of alternative investments over the years. We've been very active across a variety of different strategies, and we're excited to be focused on the world of professional sports today.
Sports investing has certainly taken off. Maybe let's take a step back and focus a little bit on your process. What are some of the key things that, goes into your investment process and when you're really thinking about the strategy of your firm?
We have a saying internally that goes something like this. If we can live with the downside, the upside takes care of itself. And what I'm referring to there is we are very focused, because we're investing our personal capital, on finding opportunities where we see a highly predictable outcome towards at least a return of our capital. And then from there, it's about identifying thematic tailwinds that are going to drive that investment forward in a very positive way. And professional sports is a great example of that. But sports have a very long track record of protecting capital in a variety of different economic environments. If you go back and statistically look at it, you'd be hard-pressed to find an owner of a sports team, certainly in the last 20 years or so, who's lost money on that investment. And so for us, it's a big focus on the downside. And then from there, it's looking at thematic tailwinds, which are going to drive the upside on the investment. And those things usually take care of themselves. And the theme with sports investing, actually, it's not about sports. It's about cord cutting. It's about this movement from traditional linear television to streaming television and YouTube TV and Amazon Prime and things of the like. And that shift in consumer behavior is really what's driving an interest in the rights of these companies and the media rights of these franchises, and then driving up the franchise values as a result.
Well, preserving capital has definitely been a prudent strategy this year, so I'm sure your investors have been welcoming that. But maybe let's focus a little bit on the environment today. How are you seeing the current, sports investment landscape, and what are some of the opportunities that you're really focused on as a firm?
Yeah, it's been an interesting development over the last 5 years or so. Forgive the pun here, but I still believe we're in the very early innings of the opportunity set for sports investing. One of the things that we like about this asset class is its stability. So through the course of 2025, we've seen a pretty tumultuous economic environment. There's been a lot of questions around interest rates. There's been a lot of questions around tariffs. There's been a lot of questions around a recession. And what's interesting to watch is sports continues to persist as an asset class. I mean, as investors, you can think about making a bet that's a cyclical bet, meaning we think the economic cycle is going to expand. You can make an anti-cyclical bet or counter-cyclical bet, thinking that you're going to see a contraction in the economic environment. What we like about sports is that it's acyclical, meaning it tends to operate outside of the economic cycle. It's as an asset class, if you go back and you look over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we've had pretty much every type of environment you could think of. We've had recessions, we've had rapid economic growth, we've had rising interest rates, we've had declining interest rates. Through all of that, sports franchises have continued to grow in valuation. And I think it really comes back to what makes sports so unique is they occupy this very unique place in the social fabric, certainly of North America, but also globally around the world. And so we've been very focused on the big four North American sports leagues. We will invest, and we have invested in franchises and in assets outside of the Big Four, but that's our primary focus today. We're very excited in particular about the NFL. This is an entirely new opportunity set that hasn't existed to this point in time, and so that's where the partnership with iCapital comes into play. We're very pleased to announce this partnership and what we're rolling out to give investors access to the NFL for the first time ever. It's never been done before.
I'm sure your investors are very happy about that. But maybe now let's pivot a little bit and talk about the current landscape. Where are some of the areas that you're really interested in or focused on for today?
We like to describe ourselves as Switzerland, where we will invest in a lot of different areas of a given asset class. In the case of professional sports, we don't have a specific focus in any one league. We're not focused really exclusively in any one geography, although I will say that we like the dynamic in North America better than we like it internationally, and I can talk about that in a little bit as to why that's the case.
I kind of want to pivot off that a little bit. You did bring up, the focus in North America. I think one of the concerns for markets this year has been, do we sell U.S. assets? What are some of the markets or areas that you're focused on internationally, if at all?
Well, we can invest anywhere we want to, right? Because it's about identifying what we want to do with our personal capital. We're not restricted in any way, shape, or form, other than we want to go find the best investments that we can. And we still think that the best investments, generally speaking, are going to be here in North America. North America has a very different regulatory environment around it for professional sports ownership in the business. In North America, we have things like salary caps. We have things like limitations on debt. We have restrictions on the nature of ownership, of who can actually own and control one of these franchises as opposed to just be a minority investor. We don't have things called relegation. Look, I grew up a New York Giants fan because my parents are New Yorkers, despite that I live in Texas now. So I'm a Giants fan. The Giants have been very bad for a very long period of time. They would have been what's called relegated if they would have been an English Premier League team, meaning they would have been bumped down to a second level tier organization and been paid less because of that. That doesn't happen in North American sports. They actually do the opposite. So those dynamics make it much more advantageous for ownership, generally speaking, across the board in North American sports than internationally. Internationally, you can borrow as much money as you want at the team level. You can pay your players as much as you want. If you don't perform well, you will be relegated. You can be owned by a sovereign wealth fund in control or a private equity firm. And so it creates some conflict of interest around, well, are you pursuing financial incentives, or are you pursuing social incentives, or are you pursuing winning incentives? It's hard to determine what masters you're going to serve there. So those dynamics make it harder to get comfortable with investing as much outside of the U.S. as it is primarily here in the U.S. And I don't just mean the U.S. Obviously, Canada has a large NBA and hockey contingent as well. We will invest internationally. We just have to be very selective where we don't have as much concern around those exogenous factors I mentioned.
Now, I know a lot of our questions have been focused on today, and our job as investors is to really look out over the future and maybe thinking about that. Where are some of the areas that you see the long-term growth potential for sports investing?
I think there's a number of things that are going to happen. Number one is the way that we consume this content is going to continue to change. When you think about what cord cutting does to the technology stack of viewing, it changes it in a pretty big way. We've already started to see an element of like micro segmentation in terms of broadcasting, right? If you watch Monday Night Football, you can watch the traditional broadcast and you can watch the Manning cast. And watching the Manning cast, you're watching the football game, but it's also entertainment. It's Eli and Peyton and their guests talking about whatever they want to talk about. And that's going to continue to happen where, because we now have these various technology mechanisms we didn't have before, particularly around augmented reality and virtual reality, I think there's going to be a day where you put these goggles on and you can sit in your living room, but you're looking at what the players are seeing. You can follow one player and watch a play from their perspective. You can take and impose yourself into the game and your own sort of likeness if you want to pay extra to do that. So I think there's no better live content than sports. Nothing else will reorient someone's day or a community's day. It has a very unique place, and the demand for it is going to continue to be strong because of that, the way it brings social, communities together in just such a unique way.
All right, well, I have to ask, Mark, as a former college athlete, what are your thoughts on the investment potential in college sports?
The first thing I'll say is I wish that they would have come up with all the NIL stuff while I was still playing, although I'm not sure how much demand there would have been for a backup goalie in college lacrosse. But I think it's interesting when you compare them side by side, a college sports athletic department versus a professional sports franchise, they make money largely the same ways. It's not identical, but it's largely the same, right? You get some type of a rights fee from a media rights deal that comes from the conference in the case of a college sports team, or from a league in the sense of a professional sports team. So you get media rights, you have ticketing, you have premium ticketing, and you have sponsorship, right? These are the areas that all these assets make money. And so they're very similar in that regard. Now, the difference is one of them is a for-profit enterprise. The other one is a not-for-profit. There's going to be good investments that get made in college sports and around college sports. I'm personally a little hesitant about how they're going to be structured and what that's going to do to the college game. I'm probably a little bit more of a purist than a lot of other folks. I'd love to just see a delineation between college sports and professional sports in terms of what's expected of the players and the student athletes, and what's not expected of them. I think the more you pay them and the more you push them towards being a professional athlete, the more they're going to act that way. And I think that college sports is it's such a unique cultural phenomenon in this country that doesn't really exist anywhere else in the world. I'd hate for us to lose that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mark. But really wanted to say thank you for taking your time today and sharing your insights with us, and look forward to speaking with you soon.
Peter, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks.